Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live on PNC Insurance Process Transformation, Reinventing the Third Party Administration Partnerships, the TPA partnerships. Um, I'm Ronak Doshi, partner with Everest Group, and I have my colleague Abhimanyu. And Abhimanyu, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, Abhimanyu this side, practice director with the firm, part of the global BFSI practice. I lead our insurance operations research, and particularly, tracking this topic, PNC insurance TPA. I mean, we are seeing a lot of demand and then change and shift happening in the market with respect to the overall operating model for these. So pretty excited to for this discussion.
Yeah, no, again, I'm looking forward to this. And I wanted to ask, right, folks who are joining us right now, do let us know where you are joining us from today. Um, for me, I'm joining us from the city of Mumbai, so not from my regular home base in Secaucus, New Jersey, but today in Mumbai. And it's interesting out here, right? This week has been a mega infrastructure projects being kind of inaugurated by the honorable Prime Minister. And it's the city is bustling, right, with a new airport in Navi Mumbai to a new metro line infrastructure to one single application that connects the all the modes of transportation. We're seeing a bit of a infrastructure uplift. With that comes with a lot of risk, comes with that a lot of insurance, and with that comes with a lot of claims, and then with that comes TPA. So this is my connection of Mumbai to the world of TPA that we're going to connect out here. So please let us know where you are joining us today from in the comment. Would love to know, say hi. Interact with us in the comments tab, and would love to know where you're from. And Abhimanyu, where are you dialing us?
I'm joining from Gurgaon, and here also, the festive season is kicking on, and as the autumn ends, there's a nip in the air, and the cold weather is soon starting. So definitely, it's really nice to discuss this topic at this time.
Okay, yeah. So we'll see folks trickling in as it's a busy day. I think it's folks are coming in, and we'll definitely share where they're joining us from. But Almanio, I wanted to get the conversation started, right? Uh,
Yeah.
PNC Insurance, we've been talking a lot about process and process transformation, and one of the core themes that we've looked at is that this market hasn't been I would say something which is predictable, right? Again, there has been a lot of challenges that comes on our way, right? From cost to challenges in terms of the technology, in terms of way it's kind of progressing, to what we are seeing in terms of regulatory versus all the talent and operations related challenges or supplier related challenges. We've seen a bunch of that, right? And it's been a hodgepodge of all the conversations we've had. But I thought you could help me make sense, in terms of what are the enterprise priorities and growth drivers, and why is TPA becoming so critical as we're talking about all of this.
I think that's a really interesting question, and one trend or shift that we are observing in the market, specifically PNC insurance, is how TPAs have now moved from just being cost centers to an outcome partner, and that is what enterprises are looking from. How can powering from modern tech, data, and new operating models, this whole model of keeping TP as a strategic partner could change, and then there are five forces that we see, which are expanding the TPA partnerships and reshaping expectations in the market. And then the five factors that we see, particularly are, tech advancements, regulatory compliance, efficiency and flexibility, cost saving, core business expansion. And then, these five have been the major factors. And if I talk about, each of them from a technology perspective, digital intake, smart document processing, orchestration, and the value-based model have moved TPAs beyond the manual effort or adjuster work that they used to do to intelligent throughput. And it isn't about just swapping people, it's how you combine the human plus the tooling or platform to remove the latency errors and rework. From a regulatory compliance as well, the frequency and complexity of regulatory changes as well as the macro level changes in the market, the overall perma crisis. Insurers are leaning to TPAs, with repeatable controls, defensible documentation, audit ready for workflows, and taking help on how they can move a lot of these licensed function to non-licensed in nature. Something which can be offshored, not just kept onshore. Just manual labor. You're just putting adjusters on the field, but how do you bring up all the things on an adjuster's plate and streamline and give a single pane of view to them so that they can streamline their overall workflow. Then comes the efficiency and flexibility part. There have been multiple macroeconomic factors which have been impacting the claims cost as a whole. Catastrophe losses, cyber, geopolitical threats, and insurers want scalable capacity with skilled adjusters, which can handle the surge which is happening in the market. The other factor is cost saving, which we talked about. Cost still matters, but it's no longer like a primary factor. It's more of a hygiene thing. And I say similarly, the final thing which we talked about, how they expand the core business. How can TPAs move from outsourcing judgment-based, non-differentiating work, and they can help carriers reinvest the attention of their core leadership team into value chain functions such as distribution, new product launches, embedded insurance, ecosystem partnerships. So how do they help with all these factors? Would be key to look after.
So, again, thank you, everybody. That's pretty interesting, and the way you put it, right? So the way I've kind of articulated this slightly differently is, at one end are your growth priorities, right? You want to drive pricing innovation, risk innovation, product innovation, experience innovation, and channel innovation, and you're trying to drive the business model innovation. As you are doing that, that's your core competency. Your core competency is not to kind of manage these processes at scale with the regulations and other pieces. So what you are doing is to make sure that there are certain other providers in the market. We're talking about the third party administrators today. They are the ones who are bringing technology, understanding of the insurance regulations, driving the efficiencies of scale, making sure the cost savings happen, and then let the insurer focus on the core business expansion, right? So you focus on your business model innovation priorities while you let the efficiency gains, cost takeout, a lot of that from a regulated and licensed workload moving into the TPA. So I think that balance is pretty necessary as we see the two coming together. And I'm always fascinated, right, Abhimanyu, which is, how has this evolved, right? Because you and I have been tracking this space for a decade or more now, and I wanted to understand, right, how has this landscape evolved, and how have the enterprise priorities evolved when we look at insurance third-party administrators?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think why we are speaking about this topic. The why now is pretty clear. The interesting part is how the TPA model has evolved itself over the period of time. And if we think of this, from a timeline perspective, if we go to the pre-2010 era, TPAs were largely paper-heavy cost centers with a lot of manual workflows. Then during the 2010s till 2020, there was a wave of digitization, consolidation, strategic repositioning. They had, some portals, some RPA cloud, and scaled multi-line players with their manual labor arbitrage. But what we are seeing picking up, 2024 and beyond, is the platform data-driven TPA, where you have human plus AI co-pilots, which are blending empathy, automation. Think of AI triage paired with expert adjusters for final judgment. How can data monetization and benchmarking create new value streams? Insight into severity patterns, leakage drivers, comparative performance, as well as a lot of ecosystem integration. IoT, climate tech, insure tech, enriches the claims context and speeds the overall decision making process. And the model has at an overall level come to an outcome orientation from transaction processing to outcome partners measured on outcomes such as cycle time, quality, indemnity control, and customer experience, as well as the architecture which these TPAs are offering. Are more modular, API first, and co-investment model for carriers, which enables faster iteration, not very big bang replacement. So the key message here being, the winning TPAs are platform businesses with configurable services, not just labor plus a RP or a portal offering. That is the shift that we are seeing in the market currently. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, and again, I was just kind of reflecting on your thoughts as you kind of put it, right? So it is not just a people or a labor-based model anymore. It is going through its own set of evolution where it is becoming data, AI, and platform powered. But what I do see is that it's not going to stop there, right? There is going to be a reinvention of the TPA model as a whole, because you cannot just be about cost savings, operational efficiency, and stop there. You need to be able to kind of say, hey, we are creating value which goes beyond all of the managing the licensed workloads. So for me, this is going to be very interesting is how do we take the A3 capabilities of automation, AI, and as well as agentic AI, hopefully soon, and bring all of that together in the platform model that you're talking about, in the data model that you're talking about, so that architecture plus this A3 has to come together to drive reinvention of the TPM model, because that is where this becomes more sustainable and resilient. Otherwise, what I'm seeing right now with the carriers, specifically the larger ones, is they start seeing a lower value in the TPS. They start challenging whether we could do it at our own scales. I understand the tier two, tier three insurers may still, or even the tier four insurers may find value in doing this in an outsourced manner, but the larger ones will definitely start seeing value to not come from those outsourced engagements, and they want to do a lot on their own. So there is pressure that may get created as a whole, and this pressure is going to drive the reinvention of TPA. Now, the reinvention of TPA definitely is not going to be easy because this requires significant amount of investments, and this investments is not going to come one way or the other. So, I think how do you kind of drive that in reinvention investment from a TPA perspective is going to be important, and that's where understanding what drives outsourcing, right? Again, from a TPA perspective, becomes very critical because we're talking about these changes in the model, moving from a labor model to an evolution model to hopefully a reinvention model soon. The outsourcing drivers are very critical as a whole, right? And Abhimanyu, you've been doing a lot of research. You've been speaking to a lot of business stakeholders, but also procurement leaders who've been telling you about, what is driving their TPA outsourcing decisions. So I just wanted to learn from you, what's been your experience? What are clients asking us about?
I think one thing to speak about, in terms of identifying that value from the overall, how do you create that ideal state of claims is very important for procurement leaders, claims leaders to think. How do you think of triage as a whole process of the future? How do you think of subrogation as a future of subrogation, future of litigation, and all these processes? So, what is that ideal state? That definition is really important, for procurement leaders, sourcing leaders, as well as business leaders. And that is where, we are seeing the selection of partners for, overall claims handling as a whole, uh, you know, def- are depending on five primary factors, and cost is just one of them, a hygiene factor, but there are more important things to look after. And then these are, first, if we talk about the strategic alignment, insurers are prioritizing partners which have a digital leadership, have that innovation that they bring to the table, as well as that ecosystem link, as well as a overall strategy, whether you can, work with partners who are already serving the carrier. So, how can you bring those market signals and tech partners to the table, not just the adjusters? Then they look after, talent and delivery excellence, hybrid talent, domain plus data plus design, agile teams, predictive delivery, where capacity, skills, and backlogs are forecasted, not just reactive in nature. Then there is cost and operational efficiency, beyond rate cost. How do you look at, value based pricing, intelligent automation, API modularity? So, you can they can slot you into orchestration layer without months of integration. Then comes the tech and innovation enablement. How can you deploy, Gen AI, agentic AI tools for document understanding, conversational claims, co-innovation lab, which moves from the pilot to production stage at a very fast pace. then governance is becoming a very important factor. How do you handle these third party relationship? How do you have those specific live dashboards, regulatory risk management, proactive risk planning, transparency, who does what? That is becoming very important. And that those are the factors that we are seeing, and it's time, for insurers as well as enterprise, to think about how can you refresh your own RFP scorecards, weigh the outcome measures, architecture fit, and the velocity of innovation that is required. And not just let the cost factor dominate the TPA relationship is what I have been hearing from my conversations with most of the procurement as well as the business leaders in the market.
And
Any
Abhimanyu,
any, any
yeah, no, again, I want to add a few, right, Abhimanyu, because we hosted a lot of our insurer customers in Dallas a few weeks back in September at our flagship event called Engage. And as we were doing our roundtables, but also our dinners and our side conversations and chats, one thing that came across to me is we want to consolidate our supplier base as we are doing this. One of the primary reasons for that is we want to simplify what we are buying, who we are buying from, and as we simplify that, how can we measure a lot of this basis the value? So as we buy basis the value, at least if we are able to define the value, then we are able to buy the value. So this portfolio simplification to measuring the value, then to be able to buy basis value has become very critical. So who are the suppliers that make the cut when you do a simplification or a vendor rationalization exercise? Are the ones who are aligned to these drivers. These are the ones who are having strategic alignment with the client in terms of what is their vision of digital, what is their vision of AI, what is their vision of the process. How are you working with their AI innovation COEs? How are you working with their CFO leaders? How are you working with their procurement leaders, business leaders, IT leaders? How are you working with all of them becomes critical. How are you talking to them about not just the licensed workload, but the entire claims process, as you said, right? Subrogation of the future, adjudication of the future. I think that becomes very critical is how are we looking at all of this? And then as you're doing this, you want this to be safe pair of hands. Have they done this? Have they deployed this? Are they investing in technology? I think that for me is becoming an increasing conversation theme is we want our TPAs to have modern platforms. We want them to have better data and AI capabilities. And a lot of the TPAs haven't kept up. They haven't invested in these capabilities. And those cracks in terms of the experience are already showing up. And the TPAs, their margins are not that healthy where they're able to reinvest back into this. So I would say that for me is becoming a core conversation. And the other piece that we picked up was what can we move away from TPAs to our traditional BPO providers? I think that became a second conversation theme because there could be work pieces where we could move from our licensed workloads to non-licensed providers because they may provide better efficiencies and scales and cost savings and holistic coverage. Because my traditional BPO providers are the ones that are also bringing more agentic AI capabilities, more automation capabilities, and the art of the possible as they're doing it. And it may make sense to kind of invest in them. Plus, the pricing is in their favor, right? So the commercial models of the traditional BPO providers is much better than what we are seeing from the TPAs come in. TPAs are charging that premium is what we are seeing. So combination of that is becoming very critical that we are seeing. The other piece is as I was planning for ITC Vegas for next week, and as we were kind of doing our internal planning with the team, our technology teams, right? Again, our research teams also have a very strong conviction that a lot of technology buying will happen by TPA because they are not going to be able to build on all of this in their own, right? And we have several folks joining us, right, from automation firms, from AI firms and others who are providing these technologies, right? So they're on the call out here who are also bringing these automation and AI technologies and other core technologies to these TPAs because they may not have their own technology to run and manage this. So I would say that's the combo that's going to be very critical. Abhimanyu, does that kind of reflect something that you were also looking at?
Yep. That is
Yeah.
really true. And one thing which is of importance, how do you look at the claims value chain as a whole?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of work that is moving, to a BPO provider to a TPA. So what we have seen in the past, a lot of transactional work around the overall claims value chain has been primarily used to reside with the TPA, but slowly with the BPO providers also maturing in terms of the domain knowledge and the judgment intensive work that is required for some of the value chain areas, we see that there is an overall movement up the value chain which is happening. So, think of fraud detection, adjudication, litigation, subrogation, which require, very judgment intensive expertise are also coming into the foray of outsourcing, which didn't used to be the case earlier. And what carriers are specifically looking at, are productized solutions around that. So, how can you offer me, AI assistance, evidence review, computer vision for images, telematics, IoT signals, guided investigation, for the overall claims review and investigation function. How do you embed tech into the overall claims adjustment and dispersal function, help me with payment orchestration straight through disbursements, and similarly across the other value chain areas such as fraud detection, management, litigation, subrogation, which are high judgment intensive and require that expertise of a claims professional. So we see a lot of these which were non-addressable market earlier, for BPOs or TPAs, with the advent of innovation, Gen AI, agentic AI are coming into the foray of the addressable market that we have for outsourcing of claim services, and that is the shift that we are seeing. And from a carrier perspective, how they are buying some of these services, they are also looking at whether a partner can help me just across the overall intake cycle, or a partner which can just help me with the overall subrogation piece. So the model that you talked about earlier on, like, value based, product based model, that is what we are seeing internally within the overall claims value chain area as well.
That's powerful, right? And again, folks who are joining us across the world from Nashville, Chennai, as well as Bangalore, do ask us questions, right? In the chat, we would love to. I know this is a dense slide that we kind of put out together, and I know Abhimanyu and I were debating whether we put something like this on LinkedIn Live, but we do see this as very powerful, right? Because when we did this work, a research piece, it became one thing became clear to us, right? That you have to look at this as a process first conversation. Because when we're talking about AI as a whole, it becomes very critical that you can't build AI for the entire claims piece, but you have to look at each sub process and activity by activity and build more purpose led AI activity as you're going to do it. And Abhimanyu, we have one question, right? So let's take that one, right? So how are TPAs leveraging AI, considering carriers seem to be demonstrative conservative adoption of generative AI? What would be your reviews? And I'm happy to share mine as well, but would love to
I
hear
think I
your
think
views as well.
I think what we have been observing, they're not going ahead with like a big bang transformation, but picking a thin slice. For example, it could be digital ethanol or document ingestion, and then you define 2 to 3 outcomes particular to that, and then run like a 60-day or 90-day pilot with your TPA provider, integrate via APIs, and then scale. And then you try similar use cases across the other value chain areas, but you keep that governance in place with the human in loop, for decisions which are more customer where the customer is also involved at the end of it. So that is where we are seeing the market going towards. Donna, what are your thoughts on this particularly?
Yeah, no, and again, when we talk about generative AI specifically and also AI broadly, I think insurance firms are realizing that they are seeing a lot of value when things don't touch the regulated stuff, right? So the early days of adoption of a lot of generative AI in the carrier landscape has been in areas like legal, in HR, in IT, in procurement, and I think those have been more successful. So which also gives them now confidence that as they are thinking about generative AI in the core process, this is an area where we can go ahead and kind of start exploring. Specifically in areas like underwriting, we're starting to see some good activity happen. So I would say that's already there. But yeah, overall, insurance carriers have been conservative. They are assessing the technology and the risk of doing it, and they need more proven solutions, right? It cannot hallucinate, right? It has to be responsible. Eventually, a lot of this is regulated, so they want to kind of make sure they are testing these things more rigorously, and kind of driving adoption in a more phased manner, right? So that's something which is very critical.
Yeah, and
And
what we are seeing, the value shows up where, there is fragmentation, handoffs, and documentation is heavy within this value chain area. That is where, TPA, which have a workflow orchestration solution, analytics, and how they are embedding AI into those solutions to reduce the overall friction and leakages where the most value is coming out. Is what we are hearing from the carriers.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I know we have a few more questions. Let's take them one by one. So the second
Yeah.
one is, what are your thoughts for market of intelligent observability to remove all vendors and consolidate with agentic AI? So, so I would say, see, agentic AI as a technology is still in its early days and infancy, right? Um, Let alone, I ask the agents, which is the custom agents that we have built for Everest Group, and I ask it to summarize some of my emails and ask me to kind of give me what are the key action items I need to do it for today. At times it starts to hallucinate, right? So again, even in basic tasks of, hey, giving me a summary of my emails and what do I need to respond after a vacation, it's still struggling. So definitely from a process transformation or operations perspective, agentic AI technology has to mature a lot. The cost of doing agentic AI also has to go down significantly for us to be able to do it. A lot of my carrier clients are telling me that I would rather use traditional automation to do the same activity because I get so much of value. Why do I really need to go through the pain of doing agentic AI? Because as I think about adopting agentic AI, I need to do a lot of managing the deficits that I have across my organization, right? And we discussed that at Engage earlier this year, right, in Dallas, and we spoke about PTSD, which is the process, technology, skills, and data. All of these deficits exist across the organization. Even if you put observability and agentic AI on top of all of these, the deficits are not allowing you to kind of scale AI at the pace that you want. So you have to take a huge, I would say, dip, right, in terms of cost to address the data deficit, technology deficit, process deficit, skills and talent deficit, drive the change management, adoption to make that happen. So it's going to be a long journey. I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball in front of me, whether it's a few years or decades for agentic AI to take a lot of that. I don't know. But again, definitely we are seeing that journey as we go along. Yeah. We'll take a
I
few
think
more. Abhimanyu. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the next question is, does AI really have accelerated the process, or are we still stuck with the traditional method, even after so much enhancement in the overall technology? I think it really depends on, the enterprise that, in the case, what we have seen, particularly with some of the large enterprises, which we have been working with the, top 10, 20 PNC carriers, a lot of them have been running these AI initiatives, to basically increase the productivity of their own resources, which is build your own AI and how can you improve the productivity of your own employees. But still there is a lot of fragmentation which we are seeing, from a data perspective, from a technology perspective. A lot of things have been spread out across different systems, be it claims or be it policy admin, and that fragmentation still exists. What we are seeing, they are in need of solutions, which can take in or integrate all these into one place, and activate that intelligence from that fragmented data systems. And that is what we are calling systems of execution, which activates the overall intelligence across the claims function as a whole. And that is where we are seeing a bit of adoption slowly starting to come, and carriers trying to develop OKRs around that, on how can they look into what should be the ideal state of claims, and how can they utilize systems of execution to reach that ideal state. Ronak, any thoughts on this from you?
I think you covered system execution. That is what I was going to say. So definitely that's the path out here. And then that requires a lot of work, right? In terms of process engineering, building the new roadmaps, then data engineering around that. So there's a lot of the PTSD that still needs to be solved to kind of get there. But absolutely, that's the path here. We've done a lot of research on systems of execution across insurance, life insurance, PNC, and several areas. So if anybody's interested, do reach out to us. Um, Abhimanyu, one question that you and I kind of keep getting so many times, right? Which is what TJ has asked. Right? Let's kind of answer that one, and then we'll try to do some of the final remarks we wanted to make, right? So the question we got is, I'm struggling with too many hands in the pot. What activities or parts of the value chain should be carrier retained with BP or with TPA? Can you speak to that in more detail? Do you want to take a stab at that,
Yeah,
Abhimanyu, and then yeah,
I'll
okay.
take a stab at it from what we are seeing with carriers particularly, So it has been like a decision sourcing framework that most of the leading enterprises take, It would consist of, what's the risk being carried across for that particular function, whether it's customer facing or not, whether what's the cost factor behind that, what's the efficiency factor behind that. So, those are the typical parameters that they look after. And specifically what we have seen in these scenarios, the transactional processes are, given to the BPO. I'll, if I have to define it, the mild complexity work, something across claims adjustment or dispersals or payment or triage, which can be, streamlined through a analytical solution or automation solutions, is given to a TPA, along with the manual labor for the adjusters, plus the overall high judgment intensive functions such as, SIU, salvage handling. Those reside with the carrier itself, is what has been the trend, and there have been certain regulatory guidance as well, that you can, if your the carrier size is this much, then you need to keep it in house only. So that's what we have been typically seeing in the market. Rana, what are your thoughts about this at an overall industry level?
Say some of this also depends on the products that we're talking about from an insurance perspective, because there are regulations which vary basis the product, and the overall state level regulations also, which kind of dictate where this goes. The one thing that I would say is a lot of the BPO providers are either buying out the TPA licenses, or are organically building the TPA capabilities. So you're going to see a bit of a merger of the BPO and TPA capabilities in one, and I think that's the path to go for. So the TPA providers who are not expanding themselves into data analytics and other BPO activities are are kind of losing out, and are losing out wallet share to a lot of the traditional BPO providers who will build that capability. So we're gonna see a lot of acquisitions in the market where some of these TPAs get acquired by BPO companies, so that that difference between the two may go away in one way or the other. I think that's something that we do also see happen. So I would say that will be my other recommendation is, are there BPO providers with TPA capabilities that you can also look at? Right. So, Abhimanyu, I wanted to, cover the last thing that you and I had, right? Because TPAs are important. I get that. They are changing. There's a reinvention. AI is coming our way. But I wanted to do a little bit of a look into 2026 in this conversation also, right? Because we're talking about labor and process, but to more of a value conversation. So I wanted to, hear from you, what are the priority areas for carriers, and how is this kind of driving a bit of a strategic focus change or shift for the insurers that we speak with?
Yeah, I think the major guidance here is how you can move from, just being processes to more of an outcome-based model where claims leaders, are trying to embed intelligence, analytics, and, better customer experience into their modernization agenda for 2026. So, on the left, you'll see, priority areas such as claims automation, STP, AI-driven triage, litigation, workflow orchestration, the overall customer experience transformation. And in the middle column, you'll see, strategic focus area. How can you help us with, touchless claims, ML severity and reserve precision, outcome scoring, low code API first flows, real time updates. And what we are seeing typically is where insurers are requiring support. How can you help us move from automation to intelligent contextual decisioning, humans in the loop where judgment matters? So that is the ask which is coming from carriers. And how can you keep pushing the STP, real time communication, automated payments to cut the overall cycle time, average handling time, without eroding that quality or as well as customer experience, as well as coming up with that flexible API driven workflows for newer products, such as embedded insurance, virtual claims, as well as the multi-vendor orchestration where multiple vendors are involved across the overall claims lifecycle. And what good looks like in a TPA partnership is completely dependent on these primary factors. If you are able to offer outcome based SLAs that balance speed, accuracy, and quality, co-innovation cadence, quarterly pilots, sharing the backlogs which were there, rapid deployment through API first design, as well as having that, data and governance fabric where you have shared dashboards, explainable AI audit trails, and, continuous governance and compliance with your TPA partner. And that is what is, guaranteeing that outcome to the carrier at the end of the model. Ronak, I think you're speaking on mute.
Yeah, that's so 2025 for me. So definitely, as we kind of reflect on this, right, I do wanted to also give an option for all our attendees with us that we do have a complimentary offer. I know we did not answer all the questions that you may have. This is a complex topic. Um, in terms of TPA when it comes to products, states, processes, your scale, your environment. So a lot of the market research will need to get contextualized to your environment, to your strategy. So if you have questions around how you have to think about the TPA versus the BPO versus the in-house, or questions around the modernization of technology and data and other capabilities that TPAs need to do, and if you have questions around your TPA suppliers, where are they? What risk do you have in working with them? Or are you thinking of looking at new suppliers? Do let us know. We have deep research in the TPA space, so we can kind of give you a lay of the suppliers, the risks that are there, their capabilities, the different commercial models, operating models, and everything that goes along the way as you do your transition. So I know there's a lot of more to unpack. So the QR code is there. The link is there in the comment chat as well. So feel free to reach out to us as we kind of see more conversations flowing in this area. But Abhimanyu, you asked me this question, right? Which is, hey, what I'm seeing in this space from a priority perspective. I would say when I look at 2026, I'm going to go back to a previous point that I made earlier in the conversation today, which is we're going to see a lot more of simplification of portfolio, right? We don't need so many vendors. We need to kind of rationalize the vendor landscape. And primarily this is not a cost play, it is a value play, which is how do I move to value based buying. I think that's going to be the number one conversation a lot of our carrier clients are going to talk about. So this requires setting up governance teams to measure that value, and then being able to contract on that value. So this is where the delinking with the labor model is already getting started. The AI conversation is front and center to enable the AI. That's where you spoke about AI driven triaging and reserving and other aspects of it. Definitely that, but a lot more. And to make all of that happen, data is going to be very critical as we do this. So heavy investments in the data, heavy investment in the process automation, heavy investment into the decisioning engines using AI, and then making sure that it is secured, compliant, and resilient as you're doing it, right? So that's our systems of execution principles that you spoke about, right? Which is, hey, how do I design systems that drive execution or drive value on the process outcomes? And as you're designing those systems of execution, you need to activate the right data in the process. You need to create the right decisioning intelligence. You need to be able to orchestrate the workflow or the process and make sure that the governance and guardrails are there. So those are the priority areas that we see from our carrier clients. And definitely as we bring all of this together, this will require rethinking supplier landscape, looking at sophisticated AI technologies, looking at better workflow technologies, and thinking about more process centric A3 that we spoke about, which was the AI, machine learning, automation, and agentic AI. How all of that comes together is going to be important. So definitely that's there. And as we look at the insurers, they are thinking about a lot of this, not just from a cost lens, as we've already spoken about, repeated multiple times, but from a value lens, which is, hey, how does it help me to drive more contextual decisioning and personalization? How does it help me to make sure that I am reducing the overall cost and friction and efficiency? And how am I building more composable architectures so that I can buy a lot of this, consume a lot of this through more traditional APIs versus trying to have more costly integration? So all of that are key themes that we're going to see. So 2026 is going to be heavy on the modernization, but not modernization on the core, but the surround is how I call it. So it's the process modernization wave that we're going to see, heavily powered by AI. And TPAs definitely need to rethink their role in this play, because you cannot just play the judgment intensive, licensed and regulated model anymore, because the economies of scales are not going to favor you. They're going to favor more of the BPO providers who are bringing the AI capabilities and getting the TPA licenses. So that's the BPO versus TPA fight that may kind of go one way or the other in terms of where the investments lies. And I think this is a great time to be a buyer of these services, because the competition also creates significant pricing pressure, which can create another added level of value. I think that's how we kind of look at it. Abhimanyu, as we wrap up, any last thoughts from your end?
No, no, I think this is good. We also have a market report coming up on this particular topic, where we have covered specific themes about the overall TPA market. So it'll come out in the next few days. So be on the lookout for that as well. And then I think there are three key takeaways that I wanted to share, specifically what I see as the model evolving. TPAs are evolving into a platform-led, data-driven outcome partner. Not just that overflow staffing that was there in the model before, and the selection is shifting towards how you have that digital maturity, predictive delivery, and innovation enablement, as well as the claims leader as a whole are moving towards how can you move from process to outcomes with a human AI collaboration approach to transform the overall claims operating model that we are seeing in the market. So I think that's the key takeaway that I would want our audience to take from this.
Perfect. And the last thing before we wrap up, we have the QR code out here, but also the comment in the chat. I think there may be some questions we may not have taken. So feel free to reach out to us. We would be happy to have a more detailed conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us across the globe. If you are at ITC Vegas next week, I would love to see you. Say hi, and we'll keep the conversation going. Have a great one, everyone. Thank you, Abhimanyu.
Thank you.